Hey team, Katie here from Equestrian Movement, and today I wanted to talk to you about the difference between working with our horses to seek the contact rather than working with our horses for submission to contact. So there comes a time in our horse's development of its body where the balance and the weight bearing shifts from the underneck and the chest and the shoulders into building out the top line for self-carriage and for a working frame. What can happen for a lot of us is we potentially could have been working on this for a year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is for you, that we get it and we're like, oh my goodness, I finally got it, and then our horse has it for a fleeting second and then we lose it again. And what that is because of is that our horses are getting supple enough to lower into contact, but they are not strong enough to maintain the quality of frame. So what we can end up doing is, out of fear, locking them down into working behind the contact because we're worried that we'll never get it again, that we're not a good enough rider, that it was an accident, that we don't have the skills, it just was a happy miracle, and then we kind of end up putting our horse's head down there and locking it in there. What we need to be doing though is recognizing that this is a moment in time where our horse has built the level of suppleness to be able to, reach with its neck longer. So it's like learning how to shorten and stack the spine, so the neck is getting more suppleness because they're not using their underneck so much to balance. And what we want is that when they go behind the bit and they go behind the vertical and they go too deep, is that we can invite their head back up and out again. So there's multiple factors involved in this. We need to have hands our horse can trust, which means they need to be soft, they need to be allowing, then we need to make sure that we're not trying to control them with our hands. And that our horses are able to seek work into and look to the contact for guidance. To have hands our horse can trust, we need to have balance in the saddle. For a lot of beginner and amateur riders, you don't have the strength, balance and stability over the lower leg and accidentally end up balancing on the horse's mouth, sometimes smacking them a little bit too hard with the bit. There's plenty of ways that we can have our horse lose trust in our hands, especially if you're having to use stronger bits, training tools, if you've used shambons, any tie downs to try and develop the working frame with your horse. They're going to keep flexing behind the bit instead of staying up, open and out to the gullet. Where that has its limitations is if our horse is working behind the bit instead of into the bit. You can see with Hunter here is that they flex away from the third vertebrae. When we get that flex behind the third vertebrae, I paused the wrong video. Let's go back. It actually puts them on the forehand. So you can see where the rump is lifted, the forehand is grounded. The triangle in the front legs is more open. The triangle in the front legs is more closed. We've got the flex away at the third vertebrae and he's behind the vertical. That is on the forehand. And so what is going to happen is his balance is in his chest and his shoulders and the underneck is engaged. How are you going to collect that? If our horses feel bit pressure and they think neck flexion instead of hock flexion, then all we are going to have is a horse that can give you a deep frame whilst also being on the forehand. And so that makes it near on impossible to scale the levels of training with dressage, but it also compromises the integrity of the horse's posture. They're not weight bearing through their haunches, they're not engaging their core, they're not engaging their top line muscle, they're engaging their underneck. And then if we try and hold them there, we do a significant amount of damage to the neck and to the pole, and then we make their back really vulnerable because instead of building top line, we've made it too loose and supple, and so now their back is going to sag, put a lot of concussion on their lower back, and then we're going to see lower back issues like bucking, not being able to pick up correct canter leads, maybe rearing. There's lots of detrimental flow-on effects to, forcing our horse's body into a shape that isn't conducive to soundness and feeling good. So we want a way to be able to invite them back up into our hands and accept the contact. We want to say thank you for them, accepting the contact in the first place enough to kind of flex through the neck there. But we certainly don't want to reinforce them to work behind the vertical. So when we're taking up the contact, we're riding the hind legs through to the hands. And as the action of stepping the hind legs through to contact, that gets them working into contact there. If you have another look here, we take the hands wide to invite him into the contact, and then we use our legs to ride him into contact, and then we're bringing our hands forward to neutral so that he can accept and work into contact. Now, being a little on the greener side, we get 10 strides in and he's on the forehand, and that's when he goes behind the vertical, and that's where we have the irregularity of the head carriage. So there's other exercises that we're going to do to help support him to build up the strength to hold the consistency of the frame. And the most important part is that you're going to be able to get him to work in slight shoulder fore. So this is how we ride our horses uphill to contact with an open gullet. And when we get that, for a short period, we're going to do that for short periods of time to build muscle. And our goalpost, what we're looking for, is the quality of the stride when he does it. We want to see if he's tracking up. Is he tracking up evenly? What do those angles look like? Are the angles from behind equal to the angles in front? Are the triangles, equal? Not yet. We've still got some work to do. But as long as, and that is why we're not seeing that consistency in the frame, because when he does start coming into his haunches here, there's still not enough flexion through the hocks for him to actually have equal amounts of engagement to lift through the wither to frame. And that's what we're looking for from posture. We're not just trying to get the rotation of the pelvis, which what a lot of horses will do, and you'll see the croup pop up. They'll still be working on the forehand, and they'll have false engagement through posterior rotation of the pelvis rather than sitting into their haunches and getting a deeper flex through the hocks and then engaging their top line muscle. So we want to have equal engagement, equal sit through the hindquarters to lift of the forehand, and then the frame is going to then be equal to what else is happening through the body there. If we end up with them too deep, then we've got all the weight on the forehand, all of the disengagement here, and the frame is more than the transfer of weight into the hindquarters and lift through the forehand. So we don't want to reinforce that frame. It is not good for their posture and it's not good for their body. So you're going to hold it for a short period of time, which is why I don't like lunging tools like shambons, is because then you're drilling them for 20 minutes in a false frame. We're going to ask them for short periods of time in contact and then build up the muscle building to hold that quality, and then we're going to let them stretch out again and lengthen out through their frame, and then we're going to ask them to stack their posture, relax, stack your posture, relax, stack your posture, relax, stack your posture, relax, stack your posture, relax. And then after a period of time, it's normally about 6 to 12 months, depending on if we have to rehab old injuries or if we have to, do other work with our horses. They might need that emotional work. They might need more help with their cue training. But generally speaking, we can look at that 6 to 12 month mark. What we're doing with our exercises is we're creating an environmental stress that our horse's body adapts to, so that it affects their overall posture and conformation. And then after that 6 to 12 month period, that environmental stress has been such a consistent stress on their body that their body adapts to it, and it becomes part of their natural posture to hold themselves in a way that carries us as riders without having to be forced into it. We're going to be using the exercises that create the horse's ability to do the work, rather than trying to control their body, control their frame, control the work through our aids. So if that makes sense to you and you want to do this kind of riding, our written online membership is currently open for registrations. And this is where, we include all of the cue training, and I include the way that I layer the cues in to get into the more complex, higher level exercises. If you are kind of like riding your horse, I'm only doing 20-meter circles, there's a lot of elements that you're going to be missing in the purpose of that 20-meter circle for actually achieving collection. So it's like, how are we using the aids and the exercises that we're doing right now in a way, like, with that future thought of how it's going to allow us to be able to do more down the track and not limit us and have us plateau in our riding and our training. And so if you've never been further than 20-meter circles or leg yield before, then you can't see where maybe the way that you're communicating now, or maybe the way that your horse is working now, is going to limit you when it comes to those higher level movements. It's all about getting really good, clear foundations. We want emotional self-regulation, we want our cue training, and we want our horse on our team enjoying learning and asking to be ridden, because that is part of having hands our horse can trust. Because when we get into the saddle, we're not trying to control them with the contact, we're only communicating with them through contact. We're going to be confident in the challenges that we're going to give our horses to build trust and confidence in us and themselves, so that we don't need to use our contact to control them. And then we're going to structure the training sessions in a way that is building equal amounts of suppleness and strength, so that it's improving our horse's posture for straightness and balance. Because that's, really what limits us and our horse's potential, is if, we're on the 20-meter circle, we're drilling 20-meter circles, and instead of learning how to use their body correctly with straightness, they're going to twist and rotate the pelvis, or they're going to drop the hip, they're going to lean into one shoulder more than the other, and then as a result they have all of these soundness issues and straightness issues, and then we're busy trying to fix problems instead of being able to move forward and progress with our training. If we focus on our foundations from, cue training, balance, straightness first and foremost, and then developing the lateral and the longitudinal suppleness to be able to come up through their back into contact, then we're going to have our horses primed, ready to move up the scale, instead of trying to break through to that next level, realizing we have to come back and start from our foundations because we've done our foundations in a way that means we can't now communicate to our horse how to do those higher level movements, which if you're using your reins for frame instead of hock flexion, here, let me put this out for you to read. If you are using your reins for frame instead of hock flexion and transferring weight into their haunches, you are going to get stuck trying to develop any level of shoulder in collection and anything past shoulder in, because our reins need to be communicating that we want a deeper sit, not that we want a deeper frame. And the frame should come as a result of the horse stacking its posture properly. So if we're thinking about stacking into our body, stacking into our posture, into our feet, balance evenly into our feet, into our hips, into our rib cage, into our shoulders, and then the neck, lengthening the neck is the last thing. If we're focusing on frame and neck first, we have no control over the stacking of the rest of the body. We have no way of communicating to the rest of the body. And then when we get to that point, okay, we've done all the exercises to have our horses ready to develop collection, but we've done all the cues in a way that they're not going to understand how we're trying to communicate collection to them. We're still going to have to come back, revisit the foundations. We have to do it all over again and say, I don't want a deep frame from rein aid, I want sit weight from rein aid. And so that's how we structure the lesson plans in our membership riding. That's how we structure our lesson plans in our membership Riding for Soundness. Oh, I didn't spell that correctly. It'll be in the link anyway. Is by making sure that the aids that we're using are going to be able to layer in on top of each other to be able to progress with our communication, our cue-based training, our language that we are creating with our horses, and it is that language that allows us to scale the dressage movements. Thank you for watching. Feel free to send us an email if you have any questions. Feel free to reach out if you're wondering if this is going to suit you and your horse, or maybe it's not. And that way we can have a chat together and make sure that it's right for you. Thanks for watching. Bye.